Michelle, and welcome back to the Royal Daily Tea. It has been a strange couple of days for me. I think I'm just going through this weird funk that daylight savings times or whatever it is no joke. I think that's put me off kilter with it turning dark so early, and also it's really cold now in Texas. I put my fireplace on for the first day, so I'm really just getting into the holiday spirit. So I think this weekend or Thanksgiving Day weekend, I am going to be bringing out the Christmas decor. And I asked this question before, do you guys decorate with the traditional colors, or do you do like the new one color theme or the new aesthetic, which is that really pretty beige theme? You guys, I'm now obsessed with pink. They have beautiful pink and gold decor. This one lady, her whole house is pink, and she had a really cute decor that she got from Michael's, where they show like this huge pink nutcracker. It's like $100. I mean, it would never go in my house, but I'm just obsessed with how cute people do their decorations. And in reality, I'm probably going to put up a mini tree and call it a day because it's just me in my apartment. You know, I always say I'm going to decorate, and I put out just a few tchotchkes and call it a day. But here's a funny thing. One of my friends sent me a hilarious mug. It says, "Call your daddy." And it says the Royal Daily Tea on it. It is adorable. She has a mug shop on Etsy. I'm not sure she's going to be offering it, but if you're interested, I will put a link to where maybe you can purchase this from her website. But you guys, we have a lot of juicy tea to get through, so sit back and relax, grab yourself a beverage, and let's get into the Royal Daily Tea. So we all know that every Tuesday, Meghan Markle drops the latest episode of her Archetype podcast, but apparently there's been a little bit of an interesting backstory where I think one of her guests threw a tiny bit of shade. Apparently, Meghan Markle did not interview this person herself for the podcast. So on the episode To Be or Not to Be, where Meghan Markle talked about the dirty B word on her website, she quoted, or she played a small clip of a lady by the name of Alison Yarrow. Well, on Alison Yarrow's social media, she put out a little post that was very, very interesting, and it might have called out the Duchess, either on purpose or not on purpose, but either way, it kind of makes a lot of sense. So Alison Yarrow put on her social media, she put, "Excited to be included in the Visionary series #Archetypes, hosted by Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, that aims to dissect and subvert the archetypes that hold women back. The first episode, out now, link in bio, features a timely interview with another legend at Serena Williams. Cheers to producer at Farah Safari, an excellent interviewer, and the folks at Gimlet and Spotify who get it done." Now, does that mean that Alison Yarrow was actually interviewed by a producer and not Meghan Markle herself? Now, I do find it odd that she calls out Spotify and Gimlet and the name of the producer and says, "Who get it done?" Now, we know famously Meghan and Harry both together signed this $20 million deal with Spotify 2 years ago, and it's taken them a very long time to produce the show. Then it was announced that Spotify and Gimlet, which is a third-party company, I believe part of Spotify, announced they're taking over production, and they hired all those 28 people to work on the staff of Archetypes, and it was through them that all of a sudden we got that surprise drop in August when Meghan dropped her podcast. So it seems a little telling, in my opinion. There was a lot of problems behind the scenes with this podcast, because when you listen to some of the episodes, it seems like when Meghan interviews the celebrities, these were filmed a while ago, because she talks about Lily taking her first steps and only being a certain amount of months old. It's very apparent that Meghan probably filmed quite a few of these interviews like a year ago, and then it probably just sat there collecting dust until Gimlet and Spotify came in with their group of 28 people and turned it into an actual podcast. And that is why Meghan does those really weird, awkward, recordings before, during, and after the podcast. I think that's kind of an after production. Meghan kind of had to do some voiceover work. It's just really bizarre. But I find it interesting that she didn't say, oh, it was a pleasure to sit down with Meghan Markle and be interviewed, for this podcast. So it seems it's a little shady that she's throwing out, praise for Gimlet and Spotify and for a producer for getting things done. Ouch. Yeah, so in my opinion, I think Meghan didn't interview her. Meghan just interviews the top celebrities, and that the rest of her crew is doing all of the heavy lifting. Anyways, very interesting. So on Tuesday of this week, Meghan, of course, dropped another one of her award-winning podcasts. This one was called The Audacity of the Activist with Jamala Jamil and Sharora Ashdashlu. Now, I listened to this episode and it wasn't the most interesting. It's like it's such a heavy topic. Every time I listen to one of her podcasts, it's almost borderline depressing. There's nothing positive or uplifting ever in any of her podcasts. And it's like Meghan just doesn't know who she is as a person, and she's trying too hard to be something she is not. And in my opinion, this is the problem with Meghan Markle. She's trying to be too many things to too many people, and she's not doing a very good job. She's like the Swiss Army knife of the archetype activist superhero, wrapped in a C-level actress. The problem with Meghan Markle is she comes off as very unauthentic because she's trying to be too many things to too many people, and she spreads herself very thin, and there's really no substance behind it. It's an act. She's like the Swiss Army knife of activism. She's got something for everybody. You know what I mean? But she really doesn't stick around long enough or stay with a cause long enough to have a real impact. She's like the Diet Coke of charity. It tastes good, it bubbles, it fizzles, and after 30 minutes, it's flat. That is what Meghan Markle does. She's the Amber Heard of charity when it comes to donations with the IOU. We're going to pledge, and when the stars align, we might give you money, but we'll let you know. And then she does like the Diet Coke version of philanthropy, where she only does it in the beginning when it's fun and it tastes good and it's jazzy and it's bubbly. And then, an hour later, it's flat. She's gone. She's moved on to the next event. So the weird thing about this podcast with Meghan Markle, the whole thing, Archetypes, she basically catered this whole entire podcast to be the ABCs of her victimhood, and a way to get back and hit back at her haters, at her critics, and the royal family. The problem is it's falling flat like that Diet Coke. It's tone deaf, and quite frankly, nobody cares. Nobody cares. And she's throwing in all these celebrities, 90% of them I have never heard of. They're not all A-listers in my opinion. They're more like C-level celebrities. And the problem with this podcast is that she tries to hit on these very important topics, but then she also has to make it about herself. So this topic was about the audacity of being an activist, which I believe some people are comparing it to Obama's book, Audacity of Hope, kind of, again, lifting from another person. She doesn't have any real original creative ideas. She's always taking from somebody. She's literally the princess of plagiarism. So here she is, trying to hit back at people who are criticizing her for, wanting to be an activist, for wanting to be a feminist superhero. The issue is nobody was criticizing her for wanting to highlight causes. That's pretty much what the royal family does, is they highlight and bring awareness to causes. That is mainly their job. They are the cheerleaders of the people who don't have a voice and bring attention to important causes. That is why they are patrons of charities. So Meghan literally could have done that staying in the royal family. I just don't understand, by her breaking free and having her voice, you don't have anything to say, Meghan. You're bringing attention for 5 minutes to a cause and you're off. If you look at the Archwell Foundation website, they list all these causes that they support, that they're a part of, but quite frankly, they haven't really done anything for any one of those causes in depth. She jumps from bandwagon to bandwagon, gets credit, gets social media accolades, puts out a press release, and she's gone. You never hear from her again. So I just don't understand why she's trying so hard to convince everyone that she's this huge feministic icon, superhero of activism, but she's not. Meghan forgets she was a C-level actress who married a prince who has a couple of things she cares about. And I'm not saying because she married a prince or she was an actress, she can't be an activist. The problem about Meghan is she doesn't know how to be authentic and she doesn't follow anything through. If you look at the actual amount of money and funds that Archwell Foundation has done, it is very, very little. Instead, Harry and Meghan are using this to highlight themselves and get money in the bank. When you mix philanthropy with a paycheck, it's a problem. The royals don't go there to get paid. They go there to highlight the charity. Meghan and Harry have made philanthropy their job. And that's the problem, is because now it's all about the money. It's all about the press and the accolades. And so then the actual charity goes by the wayside, kind of like the Heart of Invictus. When they went for Invictus, that was Harry's charity. It was there to highlight the veterans and the games, but instead it turned into the Harry and Meghan Netflix show. It took away from what they were actually trying to do, which is very, very sad. I rag on Harry a lot, but I do believe that Harry does care for the veterans, or at least he had at one point. And he really probably went into the Heart of Invictus with good intentions. However, the minute he got involved with Meghan, it went from being about the veterans to being about how much money can we get from this. Because y'all, they got to keep the lights on in Montecito. They walked away from a pretty good gig as royals. They had everything. They had the platform, they had the fans, they had money, they had the houses, security. They walked away from everything that they're doing now. The only difference is they have to pay for it now themselves, which is kind of ironic. They wanted to leave the royal life. They wanted to leave the royal family. And then when the royal family said, okay, see you later, they're now upset they're being snubbed. They have the audacity to be upset. It's like, well, they just gave you what you wanted, and now you have to go out and earn your own money, and they're finding, ooh, this kind of sucks. I got to pay for security. I got to pay my rent. I got to pay for this. I got to pay for that. Things is getting expensive, right? So when she does her podcast, it's kind of hard to follow, and she's so unauthentic, and she does these breathy words from Meghan, and and then she does these little laughs, and it's just really, really weird. So you can tell that they probably had these interviews done a while ago. Then she does her little voiceovers and brings in these 2 or 3 celebrities, most of us have not heard of. And this topic was really, really heavy. And now she's trying to be more current with the times. And so she brought in a woman who talked about the struggles of women in Iran trying to get equal rights, which is a huge topic and it's very, very important message to get out there. But then she also talked about the suffragettes, who are women fighting for the right to vote. And then she tries to put herself in there because, Meghan always has to. And I'm sure she was saying in a roundabout way, yes, I got bad press too because, I'm just a woman activist. And then she had another guest who talked about her eating disorder. and how she was working with social media to change laws about the diet culture. Again, another important topic, but these three topics were so far apart. And then she was trying to kind of throw it in together and then somehow inserted herself in the mix. The problem is, in my opinion, she's doing too much and too little at the same time. Her podcast should have one guest on one topic. You know what I mean? It should be about the guest instead of the word that she's associating with the podcast. But that's the problem. She designed the entire podcast to be about herself and a word that was associated with herself, and then somehow trying to attach that stereotype or archetype to a celebrity to put on her show. It's just weird. I've never seen a podcast do that before. Usually when you have a guest, it's about the guest. But instead, she tries to throw all these people together with a word that she associates with herself and her victimhood. It's just weird. And Meghan is not a philanthropist, superhero, feminist that she's trying to paint herself out to be. And people have a hard time really believing she's that person. In my personal opinion, if Meghan would have just left the royal family, went on social media, redid the TIG, and had a TIG lifestyle podcast where she was just talking about warrior poses and avocado toast, people would have liked her better because this is what she knows. This is who she was before Harry. And I have a video on it that Meghan, in my opinion, would have been very, very successful restarting the TIG. She could have had major brand deals. She would have been making a ton of money getting all of those freebies. She could have even done a YouTube channel where she talked about cooking and home decor and lifestyle. Again, that is more who Meghan is. That is the real Meghan. But instead, she's trying to be this political activist, feminist. Julia Roberts, California cool mom. You were a C-level actress who had a lifestyle blog who married a prince. That is literally who you are. But then she tries to play up that I was an intern at the UN and I did all these trips to Africa. But now we know that was just a fake publicity tour that she did in order to snare Prince Harry. So why does she still try to convince us that's who she is? Because it's not who she is. Most people who are brainiacs in high school, you know, the ugly duckling who didn't fit in to society, so she was the smart one, usually, you know, perform pretty well in school and go off to college and then go to serious careers like politics, work for the government, whatever. She tried to work for the UN. Her uncle got her the internship, and then she failed the exam. And then she went off to become an actress. People don't usually say, I'm the brainiac, I'm going to do all this academic stuff. And then, no, never mind. I think I'm going to go pretend to give a guy a BJ on 90210 and be a briefcase girl because that's more up my alley. It's two worlds apart. Again, it doesn't make any sense. And so she's trying to be the Swiss Army knife of everything for everyone, but now she's trying to be the professional victim. But I think they were just desperate to get something because clearly Harry and Meghan are not working together. It became very, very apparent last year when they announced that they were separating their brand. That's interesting for a couple who has to share a desk because they're so in love and they're the salt and pepper and the mama and the papa. They're so in love and everything's a love story that they completely separated all of their projects and they haven't been seen together for a while recently. I'm telling you, things are not adding up with these two. So I just find it very interesting. This podcast was very boring. It was very deep. It was very dark. I know she thinks she's doing something, but she's not. People aren't listening to her, and no one takes her seriously. She's kind of a joke. And it's hilarious to me how people like the Obamas, who she's clearly copying, by the way, have completely distanced themselves from Harry and Meghan. As much as I do not care for the Obamas, I do have to say they keep their stuff private. You know what I mean? They stay out of politics. They keep their family together. They're professional. And people who are like the Obamas, the top 1%ers of the world, they don't like their family drama on display. And when you have people like Meghan Markle and Harry who sell to the highest bidder, who's coming out with a tell-all memoir, who has a docu-series, who goes on TV and slams their family, you best believe people like Obama do not want to hang around people like that in their inner circle. Because when you're someone of that level of fame, you know, your privacy is very, very important. So who you confide in, who your actual friends are, is very, very important to have that inner circle of trust. And Harry and Meghan, you know, loose lips sink ships. And people can tell very quickly that Meghan is all about the fame and the money. If she really wanted to do philanthropic charitable work, she could have stayed a working royal and been a patron to hundreds of charities and made a real difference. But she wanted it to be about herself and her voice, and that is why she's now monetizing every time she goes somewhere. Girl gets a paycheck. It's all about the money. So this podcast, in my opinion, I've heard rumors it's going to be just a one season, but it was a complete flop. It was a complete flop. And it just seems like she's getting more and more C-list celebrities the further down we go. And the fact that that one lady came out and gave cheers to the producer and to Spotify, woo, that was kind of a dig. So what do you guys think? Do you think that woman was actually interviewed by a producer and not Meghan Markle herself? Do you think it was a dig? And what do you think about the future of Meghan and Harry and this podcast? Do you think Spotify is going to renew Archetypes for another season? As always, I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye, guys.